Today's notes will be over the group amphibians. They belong to the phylum Chordata and are in the class Amphibia. Amphibians are the first vertebrate group to be able to live on land. Their ancestor is the lobefin fish. Those limbs of the lobefin fish are what allowed the amphibian to evolve as an on-land creature. Here are the characteristics of amphibians. Make sure you leave some space as you are writing these down because you will add some things to each. Amphibians have legs, lungs, double loop circulation, a partially divided heart, and cutaneous respiration. The amphibians is the first real species that we see the true development of a lung or of lungs like we understand them in mammals. The lungs enable the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the air and the blood. So the same purpose of the gills to gain oxygen for the cells and get rid of carbon dioxide, but does it in a different manner because it's pulling it from the air, not water. One really unique thing about amphibians is that they also have a thing called cutaneous respiration, and this is the ability for them to get oxygen through their thin, moist skin. So looking at the circulatory system and circulation, we see a very close connection to the respiratory system. Circulation and respiration both are involved in delivering oxygen to the cells and taking carbon dioxide away. In fish, we talked about how they had closed loop circulation. So this was something that we saw develop in the annelids, and it is happening in fish as well. Notice that they have a two-chambered heart right here, but it is that closed loop. So we have one continuous loop of circulation where the blood flows from the gills here to the body, exchanges oxygen for carbon dioxide, goes through the heart and back to the gills to start the process over again. In the amphibians, what we see is this was a single circulatory tract. Here we have double loop circulation and a three-chambered heart. So we have the heart here in the center, and what happens, and this is starting to look very closely to what we have, the blood is going to be pumped out of the heart. Carbon dioxide rich blood is going to be pumped out of the heart to the lungs. It's going to pick up oxygen, dump off carbon dioxide, return to the heart, where it then gets pumped out to the body, drops off the oxygen, picks up carbon dioxide, heads back to the heart to start the process all over again. The reason that this developed and the reason that this is better than in the fish is that it's more efficient in oxygen delivery. Now, if you look closely at the heart of the amphibian, you can see that there are two atria and one ventricle. This is a three-chambered heart, and as we move to more complex species like birds and mammals, we'll find that there are four chambers, and that's going to be a very big difference between the heart and circulatory system between fish, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals and birds. Fish had two-chambered hearts. Amphibians have a three-chambered heart, and as we move forward, we'll see how that shifts. All of this is moving towards a more efficient system of oxygen delivery. There are three groups of amphibians that you'll write about, so again, space them out nicely on your group page. They are going to be the salamanders, the caecilians, and the frogs and toads. Salamanders are amphibians that have elongated bodies, so they're going to be far longer than the typical amphibian that you might think of as frog or toad. They're going to have long tails, and they have that smooth, moist skin, just like all the other amphibians. Salamanders have external fertilization. All the chordates are going to have sexual reproduction. That's kind of a given now. And they're going to have, the salamanders in particular, they'll have external fertilization. So the female is going to come by, lay the eggs. The male will come by and fertilize the eggs. What's really cool about amphibian eggs is that they're very transparent. So you can see the development of those offspring as they are growing in those egg sacs, in the embryos. And you can see here that development, and notice that both of these pictures are pictures of salamander eggs in water. One characteristic of amphibians is that they need a water source for reproduction. The second group are the caecilians, and these are a unique group of amphibians because they do not have legs, and they are a burrowing amphibian. They're going to burrow into the ground and will reproduce usually in those areas where they've burrowed in. They are going to have internal fertilization, and then they will lay the eggs where they will develop, and then the mother will raise them and stay with them as they grow. In some instances, they do have occasionally live birth. The last group of organisms we're going to look at in the amphibians are the frogs and toads, and they are carnivorous. And what is really cool about them is that if they can fit an organism in their mouth, they will consume it. I know we typically think, what does a frog eat? And we picture the frog eating the classic fly. And they do eat insects a lot, but they can eat small mammals like mice. They can eat small birds. If they can get a hold of them, they'll eat scorpions and spiders, and they can even be cannibalistic and consume other smaller frogs and toads, which is kind of interesting. The difference between a frog and a toad is that toads are going to have a more bumpy texture to their skin. Frogs are going to have smoother skin. All the pictures of frogs that I've posted here and the salamanders are native Nebraska species. There are no Sicilians that are native to Nebraska, so those were just other Sicilians. Frogs and toads will reproduce externally, so just like the salamanders, they'll lay their eggs, they'll come by, fertilize with the sperm, and then they will develop in the water. One cool thing about amphibians is that when their eggs hatch, they're typically going to be in a larval form where they swim and they kind of look fish-like. But eventually, as it develops, it will change into the adult form of the frog or salamander that we see. And this is called metamorphosis, and we have seen this process before in the arthropod phylum, in the subphylum Hexapoda, where it changed drastically from the young offspring to the adult form. That is the end of our amphibian notes.